Nets at least for 10 or 20 games over the past 2 or 3 seasons since Coach Kenny came in, you'd probably be able to tell that, and you wouldn't even have to be a Nets fan.
Yeah. It's definitely obvious. But that being what they want to do, are they good at it?
Yeah, I think they are. I think they've gotten better at it, partly through quality player development, through confidence, and just talent alone getting better. Joe Harris, I remember I regaled this story on the Book and Buzz with Nick. Joe Harris was one of the first players I saw 2 or 3 years ago when I went to a game against the Lakers, and Brook Lopez was the star back then. And he was the first guy I saw out there shooting shots before the game. And the guy didn't miss. And that's when the love affair obviously began. And it's been going on for the last few years since that. And it's come through. And I think obviously the culture, and you speak about the sort of intangible elements that come with that, getting a Sean Marks into the fold and all the training stuff and everything else that's gone with that. They do what they do well. They're not elite. But, as Matt has mentioned, at the start of the season, we were an elite offensive team. Finding the identity, I guess, within Kyrie Irving, Karis LeVert, Kevin Durant, when you are at your best, that's going to be the challenge. And I think, I've put this in articles. I know Matt's put it in articles. I know all of us probably know that it's going to be a large responsibility on Coach Kenny. Right now, our identity is sound. It is winning basketball. It is going to win you games, and it's going to get you to the playoffs. But at the end of the day, how are you going to do that when you've got the superstars in the fold? How are you going to be malleable with those sort of guys? How are you going to be able to, maintain the identity and not going against what you are as a team, while also giving the freedom for the superstars to do their thing and sort of free flow it and be creative? It's a tricky one, but I think that Coach Kenny is good enough, and we've sort of seen it in spurts a little bit with Kyrie so far, but it's still a work in progress.
So, can't argue against that. Matty B, same thing. Describe the team's identity.
It's a tough question. This season, I don't know if they even know what their identity is. And I don't know when we're going to figure out when that identity is going to come into fruition. The Kyrie thing, them giving this vague timeline, first, very classic Marks era Nets way of detailing, of basically coming up with an injury timeline to never actually give one. But I don't know when this Kyrie Irving injury is going to be kind of, is going to be resolved essentially. I almost wonder if Karis LeVert is going to return beforehand. And with all these guys coming in and out of the rotations, they have guys coming off suspensions. That's actually probably my biggest worry, is that at least for this season, I don't even know if we're going to figure out exactly who the Nets are in this next era. Now, of course, that doesn't even tackle the overarching issue, which is going to be when Kevin Durant returns. I mean, we know what they are. At least holistically speaking, we know what they're going to do. They're going to run a lot of pick and roll. It's going to be based on improvisation. On the defensive end of the floor, they're going to try to bring, basically, suck in the offense towards their bigs in this sort of drop coverage system that a bunch of other teams play, including Portland and many other teams. But offensively, it's going to be really tough to figure out exactly who that team is going to be within the next couple of months. So I know that's a little bit of a cop-out of an answer, but that's where my head's been at lately, really, is that these are big pieces. And they're going to be, I mean, if we really want to look at it from a surface level, route, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, they're going to be taking a lot of mid-range shots. That's different from what the Nets have done in years past. So, yeah, I think it'll be a complicated situation arising ahead.
The team identity for you, Matty B. Tell me, is this team identity contemporary NBA ball? I mean, are they a cutting edge team based on the system?
Yeah, I think they are. It's funny. So the last couple of years, the Warriors have been kind of on top of everything, and they run this motion system that is, basketball purism at its finest. It's all about cross screens, back cuts, all these other things, hand plays. They're weirdly the offense side of actual San Antonio, which, a very strange mid-range system. They're weirdly one of the most antiquated systems in the entire NBA. Most teams are kind of going to what the Nets are doing, which is a lot of pick and roll, dribble drive type of offense. So it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I do think that they are contemporary NBA, and a lot of teams are sort of swaying more towards this, especially teams that are rebuilding and trying to figure out exactly what they want to do. It is something that's really easy to take. We're going to run a bunch of pick and roll. We're going to slot shooters around a ball-dominant guard, and it's easy for younger players to learn.
Yep. No, I kind of see it the same way, but the difference in how I view their identity from the both of you guys is I look at it from what the current NBA is doing, and who you have to stop in the current NBA. And Zach Lowe, and now I'm completely paraphrasing because it's been so long since I heard him say this, said that you need a guy that defends your big wing. Like a great example would be the year the Spurs beat the Heat. What Kyrie gave them that they didn't have before, and they usually do. They usually have that, Bruce Bowens type of guy that plays a defense for them and guards the big wing, and tries to, if not eliminate them, absorb them. And when I look at the Nets' identity, I feel like their biggest flaw in how they think is that they play this pace and space that used to be very, very, very statistically sound, very, very data-driven methodology for deploying an NBA offense. But now the players are so big. Like, you've got guys who play facing the basket that are the size of Giannis, that are the size of Sabonis. And when we play those teams, we're very vulnerable. And a part of our identity, I feel, isn't in contemporary basketball. But I think we'll be able to kind of analyze that from the next few questions that I have on tap. I'm going to throw this to you, Jac. Give me a stat that defines the team, that tells you what the most about the Nets. Give me a stat that give me a stat that describes them.
Yeah, I'll give two to relate to the offense and the defense.
I'll take two.
as of one offensive one defensive one. So there's 6 in 3-pointers made, 6 in the league in 3-pointers made, and they're also 6 in attempts. They're 7th in effective field goal percentage allowed. Now, obviously, that's been like Matt said earlier, it's been a recent run against some lesser teams, sprinkled in with a few Boston games, the Miami Heat game.
Yeah.
But that shows their identity, and it shows everything that we've sort of been talking about. And speaking to the defense, I think Matt has mentioned this before. I think most people that are clued into the Nets and watch them pretty regularly know that only a switching style of defense will essentially is what works and what wins championships for the most part. And I think the Nets have the cattle to do that when they're at their healthiest, because I think when you get KD back, when you get Kyrie, when you get Karras, you can play lineups where you have Jared Allen at the 5 or possibly a Nicholas Claxton in the future in a few years' time. Those guys can switch onto the perimeter. Matt mentioned it earlier as well. There was a Jason Tatum play just the other night where he switched onto him and forced him into a tough mid-ranger. That's one of the big areas of growth that I think if you haven't watched Jared Allen, I think most people wouldn't know. But Matt, with all of his pieces and a lot of other people would know that Jared Allen is a very, very good lateral defender for a guy who's 7 foot. And I think that helps our identity and helps, I guess, gives me confidence going forward for our lofty aspirations to be a championship contender.
Excellent. Excellent. Impressive. Matt, impress me in the same way. Give me a stat that defines this team.
So the biggest thing I've noticed is they use the zone a lot, right? Mm-hmm. I think they used it 8%, or somewhere in the ballpark of 8% of their possessions on defense, which is a lot because it's something that you really want to use in only like certain situations. depending upon the lineup that you've got.
Yep.
Early on in the season, they were allowing 1.44, somewhere in the ballpark of that, points per possession, which is a lot. Like the most effective offense in the league right now, I think, scores the ball anywhere between like 1.1 to 1.2 points per possession. So they're allowing a lot of points when they were running this zone defense, right? And even with that going on, they were still a top, somewhere in the ballpark of top 6, top 5 zone defensive team. So what that tells you is, one, zone defense not working as well as it used to, especially as teams sort of work more to, I guess, beat that system, whether that be running, weaves at the top of the key or running 5-out offenses where you have shooters at every part of the floor. That's how you kind of beat. I mean, it's like fundamental basketball. The way you beat the zone, you shoot a lot of threes, you pass along the perimeter, you do skip passes, stuff like that. So,
Matt, didn't the Nets do that against the Hornets? When the Hornets threw the zone at the Nets, we essentially saw what you're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep.
Sorry to interject, yeah.
No. That's a good point. And I mean, that's kind of the way every team is. Like, I remember, like, last year, it might have been even about a year and a half ago. I don't remember who. I think it was somebody at The Ringer did an article on the zone. It could have even been, like, Kevin O'Connor, who's one of my favorite reads. And he did an article on this. It was from the Nets, I guess, from their camp. They were the ones that first started doing it. And it was this unique style of play that nobody had seen. It was only seen in AAU basketball. Then, of course, I mean, this is a copycat league. Every team starts doing it. Teams start scouting it. Well, 1 year later, they're running it into the ballpark of 1% to 2% of their actual defensive possessions. So I bring that up. That's a weird kind of like niche stat, right? What that is to bring up, though, is that this team adjusts on the fly. They've done and you know what? Atkinson early on, I was, I try to preach a lot of positivity, especially on Twitter, which is, I can do that to a fault in certain situations. But there were real questions with Atkinson. I mean, there were things that were going wrong, and it just felt like he couldn't take control of games. And then in the last 3 weeks, I really felt like he's made the right adjustment. He started playing guys that, I mean, it seems like the whole Twitter universe wants to see. David Nwaba, extended minutes for Nick Claxton at the 4. He's made every adjustment that everybody wanted to see. We've got a long look at Musa. We've gotten Garrett Temple in the starting lineup to switch things up. So that stat proves to me this team's adjusting on the fly. They listen to what the data tells them. And I think that is something that's worth keeping in mind, looking at them going forward.
You know what? I'm gonna throw one out there too. That was dope, Matt. My challenge with this team is what I feel keeps them from being great. I think if you look at NBA team fast break efficiency, like right now, the number 1 and number 2 teams in fast break efficiency is the Bucks and the Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
I think teams that championship teams are the ones that can score on easy fast break points, and I think the flaw that's a very hidden flaw that the Nets have that kind of keeps them from going where they need to go is their fast break efficiency. Right now, they're 18th in the league on scoring on the fast break. And those are easy buckets. Those are buckets that decide playoff series. And I don't think necessarily that it defines. I think that you guys both did a great job in defining the team. I wanted to add something to that I've noticed over the last 20 games is that they just don't have guys that run and dunk. They have 2 really, really great guys that are in their centers, but fast breaks are usually, I would say 30% of the time, are started from a center blocking the ball. Jared Allen isn't usually the guy on the end of the fast break, and the Nets' wings are not guys who are going to finish in the form of Joe Harris and Taurean Prince, and Joe is hyper efficient on dribble drives. He's not great at grabbing a lob and dunking it. I think the flaw in the Nets methodology is that they can't run and score on the break. Last year, just to show you how far back you could almost